sprint to the waiver wire and add these 10 players to improve your fantasy team for week 8. We're going to get it started with a list of rapid fire players you should already have rostered and will be your number one priority. And as you look through those players to see if you have them, I'll go through the quick rapid fire must know fantasy fast facts for this week. Brock Bowers is on pace to beat Puka Nakua's rookie receiving record with 105 catches. He also has a 31.8% target per route run mark this season without Adams on the field. For reference, that is second in the entire NFL, only behind Malik Neighbors at 31.9%. Brian Thomas Jr., as of right now, is one of only 15 wide receivers since the year 2000 to put up 500 plus receiving yards in his first 7 games. George Pickens has the 4th highest target per route run percentage in the NFL right now. This was the first game of the year where we saw the snap percentage between Najee Harris and Jalen Warren split 50-50. And we also saw Najee's rushing attempt percentage against lighter boxes jumped from 29% with Justin Fields to 52% with Russell Wilson, meaning there is more efficient days to come. In week 7, Tyrone Tracy had 67% of the snaps compared to Devin Singletary at 22, leading to 69% of the routes run for Tyrone Tracy and 15 for Devin Singletary. He really is this RB1 at this point. Mixon had 63% of the offensive touches for the Texans with 54% of the total yardage for them last week. Sam Laporta has only been above a 10% team target share in 2 out of the last 7 games this year. That is not great, but on the other side, Keon Coleman's target share has jumped from 13 to 22% with Amari Cooper coming to the team, and his air yard share has also increased by 13%. Okay, if you guys appreciate the statistical value and knowledge coming from these videos, please go down and subscribe. It helps me out so much as a creator, and like the video while you're down there as well. That is everything I do on this channel. Numbers, statistics, and fantasy football success. But getting into the first player we need to add, probably the number 1 waiver add for this week is going to be Juwan Jennings. Brandon Ayuk has feared to suffer an ACL tear. It's not confirmed. The MRI is happening. By the time this video comes out, it might have already been confirmed, but it looks like he's probably going to be out for the rest of the season, if not landing on IR for at least 4 weeks. But between Ayuk missing time and Debo's missed games so far this year, that led Juwan Jennings to make himself pretty much a glue guy for Brock Purdy, even if he didn't play last week due to a hip injury. In the one game he played without Debo this year, we remember 42 fantasy points, 11 receptions, 175 yards, and a couple touchdowns. Now, if we take Ayuk out of the equation, I'm not saying this is expected, but his time on field without Debo has jumped from 60 to 80%, and he's the wide receiver 8 in yards per route run. So now, okay, Debo Samuel's not Juwan Jennings. If we look at all of Juwan Jennings' historical games in his career where he played without Brandon Ayuk on the 49ers, he averaged a 24.2% team target share, 12.1% first down per route run percentage, and 2.73 yards per route run with a total of 66 routes that he put those numbers on. Now, if you look at that compared to his games with Brandon Ayuk, an 18% target share, 7% first down per route run, Jennings is only behind Nico Collins, Justin Jefferson, and Chris Godwin in PPR points per route run this season. Now, that's not 100% confirming that he's going to get 30 plus fantasy points a game, but it shows you he has a lot of upside and potential, especially if we're not going to have Ayuk in this offense. But the second best add of this week is also going to stay on this team. It is Ricky Pearsall, which is a win-win because Juwan Jennings is rostered in more percentage of leagues than he is. So if he gets taken first, Ricky Pearsall's another great option. And he sneakily has the most upside in this offense if you listen to what I'm about to say. This week with no Debo and Juwan Jennings, he led the team in offensive snaps and routes run. Now, I'm not going to say he led the team in targets as well and take this number for more than what it is because I could tell you all these fantasy statistics and feed you a bunch of fake information, but we didn't have Brandon Ayuk and we also didn't really have Debo Samuel, so obviously he's going to lead the team in targets. But he was clearly the next man up, and the hype for this guy was building before his injury. Obviously, I'm not really going to talk about it on here because it is unfortunate and probably not good for the guidelines, but he was a first round pick and we cannot forget that. And what's really good about Ricky Pearsall and stats people aren't going to tell you is that last week in week 7, he led the 49ers in snaps out of the slot with 18. That was 2 times higher than any other wide receiver in this offense. We know that slot snaps and routes run out of the slot typically means more targets. You look at Amon-Ra, he's pretty much averaged a 30% team target share for his entire career. He plays primarily out of the slot. CeeDee Lamb as well. This could be a league-winning ad if Brandon Ayuk does happen to miss the rest of the season. Everybody's going to be getting Juwan Jennings for the short term, which again is a really good idea, but Ricky Pearsall does provide some more long-term upside, and he is a guy I definitely want to be adding this week as well, if not already been on your IR slot. But keeping it with the wide receivers, we do need to figure out this Browns wide receiver room. I mean, we have no Amari Cooper. Deshaun Watson is torn his ACL. He's out for the year. Now, I hope you guys bought in on David Njoku. We talked about him last week, but if you didn't, there is still some efficiency left on the table for some of these wide receivers to come claim. This team still won't be great, but if we look at the numbers from week 7, we see Cedric Tillman, the Browns' 2023 third-round pick. He was second on the team in routes run, only behind Elijah Moore, with 12 targets and 127 air yards, and that led the team in total receiving yards as well. The bad news is that it's really hard to predict anything in this offense, one, because it's bad, and two, because there was so many quarterbacks that came in here. If you see Jerry Jeudy, he was targeted one time in 43 routes run before Winston was in the game. Then once Winston came in his 12 dropbacks that he played, he targeted Jerry Jeudy on 4 of those and had 63 air yards. So, in my opinion, if Winston is the quarterback, Jerry Jeudy is going to be the number 1 waiver pickup you want to get. He's still not rostered in too many leagues, and he did only put up 2.8 fantasy points, so I expect people to go through and drop him. So my order for your waiver wire pickups on who you want to get is going to be Jerry Jeudy number 1, most likely Cedric Tillman at number 2, and then Elijah Moore number 3. I would still buy in on one of them because I do believe somebody's going to have a little bit of success as far as maybe a flex spot goes. We do have to temper our expectations a little bit for this offense though, and if we look at the running backs here, Alexander Mattison is going to be a guy that will answer all of your problems if he's still out there on the waiver wire for you. He's seen great numbers and great splits in the running back position with Zamir White and everybody else. I'll go through it really quick. In week 7, Mattison had 69% of the snaps, which led him to 23 out of the 26 total rushing attempts for this backfield, 22 routes run compared to Zamir White, who just does not exist. 4 routes run for him, only 3 carries, 14% of the snaps. He had a lower route run and route participation percentage than Amir Abdullah, which is absolutely insane. You look at the usage split, Mattison had 100% of the goal line snaps. He split third downs with Abdullah 50-50 and dominated pretty much everything else. He seems to be the RB1 here. Zamir White, just again, does not exist. The offense looks terrible though. You can't expect him to get 92 rushing yards and this many fantasy points a game. The bright side is that he does run a ton of routes and he will get used in the receiving game, which is going to keep his floor higher. But we don't have Aiden O'Connell. He's going to be out for a while. Not like that really helps. Brock Bowers is really the only bright side of this offense, and you're going to have to pick your spots against very positive run defenses. You're not going to be starting him against Chiefs and Titans defenses. But if you're looking for a tight end, which I assume everybody is because that position is a wasteland this year, Hunter Henry officially is going to be one of those guys simply because Drake May upgrades this offense. It might not be a ton. He might take them from the worst offense in the league to an average, mediocre, maybe even a little bit below average team. But that jump alone really does upgrade this offense. We see in the first 5 games of the season, this offense was averaging 11.2 points. And in that first 5-week stretch, Henry was averaging 5.1 fantasy points a game. Then May steps in 18.5 points a game on average, which leads Henry to a bunch of fantasy points, which we've seen for the past 2 weeks. And he led the team in targets last week with 9, 24% team target share. That is pretty good there. And we have seen these kinds of games from Hunter Henry before. I specifically have been talking about him for 2 years to not pick him up because he'll have one good game over like 20 fantasy points, 10 receptions, and then he'll be absolutely nothing for the rest of the year. And I have more than enough experience telling people not to add him because of those reasons, and it proves true every time. But now we actually have something different in the offense is more efficient with Drake May. He is bottom 5 in the NFL in time to pass out of the pocket. So when that does happen, you're going to have to keep everything close to the line of scrimmage, not that far down the field, which is definitely going to help Hunter Henry with his receptions per game. But looking at some quarterbacks following that, Drake May is a guy that we officially can add. Only 25% rostered, which he's had 20 fantasy points in back-to-back weeks. He's definitely still going to be risky, but he does prove some efficiency for everybody in this offense. It looks a ton better. As I talked about before, they've improved by almost 7 points scored a game. That's going to increase the offensive movement, yards, everything we like to see. And you can actually count for his rushing upside to give him a higher floor every week. He's not going to be Jaden Daniels, but he's going to give you, 2-3 points maybe on the ground. That's a little bit safer for a guy like Drake May. But speaking of that security, we still need to be rostering Tua and adding him off our waiver wire because he's gone under 40% rostered on the year, which is insane. I don't know why everybody drafted Tua. Why not just keep him on the IR slot instead of dropping him? But he's out there. If he is, still go at him. He has some of the best talent in the NFL, in Jalen Waddle, in Devon Achane, even Raheem Mostert if you want to add that, Tyreek Hill of course. And he is expected to make his return in week 8. At the very least, you can use him as trade bait, get a better guy in return. But as for the defenses, we can go ahead and pick up my favorite part of the video. The Chiefs is going to be the number 1 option here. I talked about them last week in the stash video to add them for this moment because they get a matchup against the Raiders with no Aiden O'Connell, with no Devontae Adams, and a team that really does not look great on offense. And the Chiefs defense, out of the list of all the defenses I'm going to talk about here, have the number 1 best defense on their own solidified. They're allowing bottom 3 points to opposing wide receivers and running backs. They are very tough, almost averaging an interception a game. And we can also go through and add the Lions, who again are barely rostered in under 20% of leagues, but they get a matchup against the Titans, who are absolutely terrible. If we do have Will Levis playing this week, I'm going to move them up my rankings even more. And finally, we're going to finish this out with the Chargers, who are another defense we can go through and add. They get a great matchup here against the Arizona Cardinals, who have not been looking great as well. They have a bad offensive line leading to a bunch of sacks. Thank you guys for watching this video. I will see you in the next one, the waiver wire trap video coming tomorrow. Don't miss that.